Okay, what's up, y'all? Welcome to the 97 Demo Podcast, where we give you the latest in music, news, and a whole bunch along the way. I am one of your three hosts, Nnamdi, joined by my two friends,
Noah McGee
and Avery Dalal.
You guys, this week we have kind of like a fun, busy episode. It's the return of our 97 Demo Profile series, where, in case you don't know, we pick an artist that we're all really into, still on their journey to sort of music stardom, maybe for lack of a better term. And, we just talk to them about it, what they're doing, their music, and everything above. So,
Nnamdi, who do we have this week?
Well, Noah, this week our people are going to be meeting Wiley from Atlanta, who, as his name implies, is from Atlanta and just put out a really dope project called Kingfisher. That we're all, I think, really into. It's like, one, he has this R&B soulful sort of presence to his music. He raps on it, but he really sings really well with like this kind of husky voice that I think you guys would really be into. And this is a concept album, and anyone who's listened to me talk on this podcast knows I'm a sucker for a concept album. So we talk about how he literally like treated this album as if it was a movie and created a character and wrote like a plot for it. And anytime you have that much dedication into music, you just know the final project's gonna hit. So
everything was really thought out, for sure.
Right?
It's impressive. It's impressive.
Really impressive.
You went to like map out this project.
From what he was wearing on the cover to like
he was writing screenplays,
writing screenplays. Like, he's a really thoughtful guy, and he's really thoughtful about his music, and he thinks about music that way too, which is great. And he gave a great interview. So yeah. Yeah.
So, honestly, I don't even think we have to tee it up anymore. I want you guys to hear this all for yourself. And like Noah said, he lays it out for you. He lays it all out there. He tells you how he does his music. And honestly, you can hear it best from him. So without further ado, here is our interview with Wiley from Atlanta. We're back with the artist I've just spent all that time queuing up, Wiley from Atlanta, who from East Atlanta, I've been doing it for a while now, and recently released a project, Kingfisher, which, let me just tell you, I'm a big fan of it. These guys know I'm a sucker for a concept. So, I feel like there's definitely a strong concept here. We'll definitely talk about it. But first off, man, how are you doing? And just give us your basic intro statement. Like, tell us who you are.
Thank you. Thank you so much for saying that about the album too. Wiley from Atlanta. My real name is Will, short for William, not Wiley, which a lot of people assume my name is Wiley, but it is what it is. A lot of people also assume my name is Willie from Atlanta. I don't know why anyone would subject themselves to a stage name like that, but I have tons of fans that think that I'm Willie from Atlanta. So I started making music when I was started writing when I was 13, like writing lyrics because I wanted to be in this rap group I didn't get into. And then in high school, I just started making music, I started to care more about music than like other shit in my life. And I think I had started to realize this is really my passion. So it's I have other things that I like to do, but this is what I want to focus on. And so when I graduated high school, that was when I really leaned into it and started going to every show that I could go to in Atlanta. And it's one of the first pieces of advice I got when I went to this studio on Edgewood when I was 16. So the recording engineer, who's super cool, I still follow him on Instagram, but I don't know. I never know if he would remember me, but sometimes he'll comment and be go off, bro. And I'll be like, oh shit. You do remember me from when I was 16. But he told me if you want to make it, you have to go to everything you can go to, every show, every event, even if you're not performing, just so that people see you there. And it made a huge difference. And I mean, that's kind of where I'm at today, is just kind of be in a position that I really feel like I visualized a long time ago. I knew when I was 15, 16, that I really wanted a career that was built on meeting people face to face and building a fan base and not trying to put my energy into making that one song that's going to launch some sort of career, but try to make sure everything I put out is very large. What the fuck am I looking for? Basically trying to set a foundation. So everything I have has some depth to it and some sort of a way that you can immerse yourself in the music. So it's not just, because I feel like a lot of artists, when they start off, it's like single, 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 EP, single, single. And I really didn't want to be that artist. I really wanted people to like look forward to my albums and think of me as like an artist that makes albums. And so even when I was first starting out, that was like a huge, you know, my first mixtape that I really consider like my first mixtape that I put out in like 2017, 2018. I don't remember. I have to check. But that was really like an album focus thing at a time when I didn't have the platform for people to really care about it. But I think it worked in the long run. But yeah, I don't know. That's who I am. I would consider myself like a writer first and foremost, kind of like a writer director person. I mean, obviously like a singer and a rapper and performer, but I think writing and sort of like visualizing these concepts and trying to give a certain depth to everything I do is really how I try to define myself, more so than just the performing aspect, which is like the most fun part. But
and you know, I get that a lot from your music. That makes a lot of sense, because even when we always listen to anyone we interview, we make an admission to sort of listen to their discography, and I mentioned to them that most artists we interview, their first project typically has a ton of different sounds and they experiment a lot and they're trying to find what works. But you seem to, from a very early point, have sort of identified a lane that works for you, a sort of R&B soulful feel that sort of incorporates some rap that, you know, really kind of your voice really just does really well with. And you've sort of mastered that early on. And normally when we do these interviews, we start from, you know, your previous work and we build up to your latest. I kind of want to flip that, because I think Kingfisher, for someone who, like you said, has really kind of only been seriously releasing music for about maybe 5 or 6 years, I thought that was a project that's on the same par as many of the R&B new rap acts we hear now. So I'm wondering if you'd mind sort of walking us through the concept. I read on your website it was sort of like inspired by this vision of the Kingfisher Motel, and the first song is No Vacancy. So I'm a sucker for a story. So tell me sort of the story behind that album.
Yeah, hell yeah. Thank you so much, first of all. Some point, I don't remember if I started working on the project 2 years ago or a year ago, because COVID like fucked up my mental timeline. I don't remember, like, but I'm sure it was like 2020 when I started like really writing it. Honestly, I had this idea. I was like in a session with this friend of mine who's a very like jazzy producer, and he was like playing saxophone or some shit like that. And we were just like talking about music and, you know, what we've been listening to. And I just got this kind of idea to write an album that, because my 2019 album was really very focused about a specific event in my life. And so I think it was like telling that story. And this album, I just had this thought, what if I just write an album that's set at a place in my mind, and it has characters and it has, you know, a plot, and it has kind of these different elements, but it all takes place in this one location. And so what I was trying to do is write songs that all just sort of exist in that space in my mind and kind of tell the story. But I try not to write too narratively when I'm making songs, but sometimes those are like the coolest songs ever, what, you know, but I try to more use imagery and what I'm writing and try to convey the ideas in my head with that imagery. And like, really the whole concept was just this like seedy, but very kind of like seedy, but also beautiful in a weird way, like in a way that only kind of like an old vintage, like motel could be, where it's like, on the one hand, you don't really want to stay there because it's kind of shitty, but it has this sort of magic about it. Like, and I just was sort of fascinated by this idea of like, you know, a place that kind of feels like it exists outside of time. And it's almost like, you know, I was definitely inspired by kind of like the Lotus Eaters concept, where it's like you stay somewhere for a period of time and you think it's only been like a few days, but you've really been there for a really long time. And so all these kind of thoughts and themes of like, you know, a motel being a sort of purgatory, and then thinking about like who would be staying at the motel and what are they singing about. And so, you know, a lot of the songs are crafted really to be like love songs, but a lot of the lyrics are more specific with what was in my head, as far as like Tom the Mailman, for example. Like, part of why he's featured on that song and on the album is because I just saw him at the motel, like in my head when I was working on the album. I was like, he would be there. He, like, his voice needs to be a part of this. And sorry about that. And his, like, that song, you know, Alien Girl, I thought it was so interesting. Like, a lot of the album is kind of about taking an idea of something like really exotic or beautiful, but also showing the kind of darker side of it. And that's what I think attracted me to this motel idea. That's where kind of the pink suit concept came from, is like this seedy kind of like gambler character that just sort of like exists at this motel. And it's like the pink suit, you know, like that was an idea I had really early on too, that it's like you're wearing this kind of flashy suit with all this jewelry, but all the jewelry was fake. The suit was like a $15-$20 suit we got off Amazon. Like, we wanted it to have this look of kind of like vintage, sexy, classy, but also seedy and like shitty and run down. And I think like it's just, you know, it's like one thing that I love about, this is a random sort of segue, but about Atlanta in general and about the show Atlanta really does this well. And kind of how Atlanta, I feel like, is represented in my music, is like Atlanta is somewhere that a lot of stuff is going on at one time. Sometimes things are happening and other things are happening. Like, it's almost like there's two different cities like going on at one time. And like, you never know, kind of like there's like a darkness that's like beneath it. But I don't mean like in a scary way. I just kind of mean like, you know, Atlanta has this amazing way of almost portraying Atlanta as magical, but it's not literal magic. Most of the time, it's just like you find yourself in these fantastical situations. And that's kind of like the South to me too. It's like there's a lot of this, like, you encounter the weirdest shit that you've ever seen, you know, but it feels normal. And so the whole concept for this album is like, how do I set an album at a location and then just let the imagery and the scenes kind of speak for themselves? I have like a plot, you know what I'm saying? I wrote like a couple of different like screenplay outlines for what the story would be. And I wrote like 40 pages of like kind of a novel version of what the story would be. And that was really just to give me direction in the writing of like, okay, like, how do I get from point A to point B in this album? How does it feel like it makes sense? You know, you start with like no vacancies. That's an obvious, you know, kind of motel imagery, but I wanted that to be the intro, like from the very beginning of working on the album, because I love this idea of like, it's almost like you're booking a stay at this motel, sort of metaphorically speaking, when you listen to the album. So it's like, I'm really intrigued also in the whole like track one to the last song, the way those tracks sit together and like the way they kind of contrast one another always really excites me in music. And I've always tried to kind of have that, you know, just so that when you're listening to the album, when it starts over, it feels natural. It doesn't feel like you're starting something over. It almost feels like you're just recycling it, you know? And I think that's a big part of my goal.
And you hear that the project itself, it's so refreshing to hear. I think just someone new talk about all the effort they put into not only crafting an album, but crafting the story behind the album, because that shows through when we're listening to the final product. Like, whenever I review an album or talk about an album, I'm always big on like, what is it cohesive? Is it telling a story? Like the sequencing. I think there's so much effort that should go into all of that. And I think the fact that you do all of that already is honestly so great. When you sort of crafted that plot in your head, you talk about no vacancies coming easy, but were there any songs, like what songs came natural to that versus what songs were a bit harder to, you know, you have to sit down in the studio, really give it time to write? Like, as you had that plot, did some things come easier than others?
That's a great question. Definitely. I mean, I think the earliest songs for the album were like No Vacancies, and Amaretto Baby were like, so that was just like, because Amaretto Baby for me was like the theme song for this like pink suit character. who's in my head, his name was Amaretto. So that's kind of like another element to it. But those were like two of the first songs I made. And then like Run My Mouth in Arizona, I think like those were 4 songs that I was just like, this is the bones of an album and these fit so easily. And then honestly, like the rest of it was just kind of putting pieces together because, you know, Gray Skies, Keep Me High, those were both songs that I made really late in the process where we already kind of had an album. And then I just wrote 2 songs that I was like, these are the ones, like we have to get rid of these other 2. And, you know, so it was an interesting thing. I think, you know, on Blue'll Make Me Cry, my 2019 album, was such a different process. And like, we weren't really making a catalog of songs to choose from. It was like, we had a bunch of obvious B-sides and then like the ones, like we knew when we were making those songs, like, oh, this one's going to be on the album 100%. Like there was almost no sort of trade-off. With this album, I had a very specific vision in mind. I made like a lot of songs and there's a ton of demos. And then we really just had to narrow it down and be like, which songs do we feel like hold this theme the best? Which songs sit together the best? And so, you know, like Gray Skies, I wrote the day before the like final album recording. So it was like that song almost like didn't exist. And then it just sort of was the perfect fit on the album. So I think with anything like that, it's a weird thing when you work on an album for like 2 years because you have songs that you've had since like for a year. And then you have songs that you can make weeks before the album that if like they need to be on there, you know, you're going to do it.
How did the like music itself evolve from when you were like conceptualizing it and like writing those screenplays and like coming up with that story? How did the music evolve from then to like that like last day before the recording?
That's a great question. I think it changed a lot because all of the kind of early stuff I was making was very like fast and kind of, I'm trying to think of how to describe it, but you know how Contact High is really grounded in this like falsetto vocal. So I was making a lot of songs in that lane, a lot of music that, you know, I had songs called like Chandelier and like Glitter Smoke and like all this really, I was like, let me just make this really like sexy kind of intent, like fast paced music. But as I was working on it, it was like, I started working on it in the summer and all those songs were really making sense. And I had so much kind of bounce on the album. And then as we continued to work on it, I just felt more, I was like kind of tired by the falsetto. And I was like, I don't want this to be the whole album. You know, this isn't like my Gambino moment where you're like, oh my God, he can sing like that, you know, and then he does it for like 8 tracks. I felt like that original music was almost like I was kind of making it more to be performed live than I was like, how do I make the best music for listening to an album? Because at the time, like, I wasn't playing live at all. So I think I was like, I just naturally gravitated towards making music that felt very live and like energetic. But I also think, you know, I mean, this is kind of, it's going to sound like fucking pretentious, but it just is what it is. I had a very like, when I was first writing the album, that whole kind of pink suit character, like Amaretto character, I really felt like that was this like falsetto singer, this almost like Jameson type performer that's like, you know, says super like vulnerable, sensitive things, but is also an asshole. And so I was like recording music from his perspective. And I think it took some time as we were working on demos and fleshing out things for me to be like, I want this album to be my voice. I don't want it to be so experimental that it's like a different character entirely. You know, I really wanted it to like sit in my catalog and be something that, because it's so different from my last album from 2019. But I think if you listen to them back to back, it's like, it's the same sonic performance. It's just in a very different style. And that's partly because such different styles of like album making process. I mean, it's about as opposite as you can get from this album to the last one. But yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I really think it's just like over time of working on an album, you realize like what the sound is and what not the hit, because I don't think anybody can really predict what a hit is going to be. But it's like you get a sense of the story, you get a sense of how your voice is going to sit on each song. And that's really how it came together. It was like, okay, I have this concept, I have this character, I have this certain energy I'm bringing to these songs. How do I make it my album where it's not just performative, but it's also like my voice?
Yeah, that's super dope. Kind of going back to, they've already talked about like the songwriting, the concept you kind of came up with. What I want to kind of talk about is like the production behind the music, because obviously for me, now you can tell me if you feel different, but for me, the production from Blue Don't Make Me Cry to Kingfisher, it kind of sounds like you kind of made a little bit of a transition. Not like obviously you veered off and, did something totally different, but
Right.
the production kind of feels different with, Blue Don't Make Me Cry. It's kind of, less energetic, more bleak, I would say. Correct me if I'm wrong. And
No,
Kingfisher,
absolutely.
obviously, there's more energetic tracks, more upbeat. What was the process behind the production for these two projects, and kind of how'd you come up with that and craft that sound and feel like that fit the emotion you were coming across of? Because that's what I get from, especially Blue Don't Make Me Cry, the emotion that comes off in the production.
Word. Thank you. No, I mean, the thing about Blue Don't Make Me Cry that makes it so different from this album is that album would not exist if it weren't for me and two friends of mine having like a close friend of ours pass away, right? Now the artist that passed away, Jared, it was brilliant. He worked with, the producers that made Blue Don't Make Me Cry were kind of his main producers. And they had a really good relationship, and I had never really worked with them. And so when he passed away, I mean, I knew them, but I just hadn't really made stuff with them. And I think when he passed away, it was such a like intense sort of moment for all of us that we needed some sort of like collective catharsis to like move past it. And so we set out to make an album that was like a love letter to him. And so I think that's where the emotion comes from, and the production, because, I mean, the like we were really like, choked up in the studio making those songs, and like, trying not to cry at certain melodies. And so it's like we did have to make a choice to not, there's some songs that we made for that project that are so sad, and like we didn't put them out because I didn't really want that album to just be sad. I wanted it to be like exciting. I wanted it to be the kind of album to show Jared where he would be like, this is fucking cool. And so the process of making it was like me, two producers in a bedroom in Athens, like every week, building these beats, like, instrument by instrument, essentially, which I had never really made music that way when we did it. And so I think with Kingfisher, because of COVID, I couldn't go work with them. I couldn't really do sessions. And so I thought, the way that I had always made music before was like, I reach out to producers I like, I find beats on the internet, I see if they're available. I kind of like network my production. And so that's really where like some of my biggest songs that I've made have come from. That's where like Pink Skies came from, that like that strategy and that approach. And when I started working on this project, it was really important to me to feel like, not that I love collaborating and I love working in a room with producers, because you really like, you're all sort of connected with a common goal, and it's really exciting. But I think that I also wanted to make an album that felt like it was all like my ideas, where like, even if I'm reaching out to someone to send me a beat, or if someone's sending me something, it's like the project itself, I kind of have final say, I can add a little bit here, take something away there. I wanted to have a project I could really creative direct, like start to finish, because the last one was so collaborative. And so, I really think that's what made it different. And then like COVID just like forced me into that. I mean, I was doing Zoom sessions, like Kieran Waters was this kid in LA who I got introduced to, and we had like 3 or 4 Zoom sessions where we mostly just like talked, like just hung out. But like he would send me beats, and that's where like No Vacancies and Run My Mouth came from, was just me talking to him and being like, yo, I want something like this, or I want something like this. And, a lot of that music really came about that way. I would tell them about the hotel or the motel. I would tell them about kind of the idea and the theme, and they would just send me stuff, and we would work that way. I mean, like I said, because I was making this album so kind of like solo with all this production, that's why there's so many demos from it that like didn't end up making it, because with the other one, everything we were doing was so intentional.
Yeah. And I want to ask you, while we're talking about Blue Don't Make Me Cry, one of my favorite tracks from that stood out was Shells on the Rug, which features Kenny Mason, who's also another like rising Atlanta artist.
Yeah.
How did that come together, and where do you think that fits on that project, considering what you just told us it like,
Yeah.
is about?
I mean, it's funny because that song specifically is kind of like both things, where we kind of made that song by accident. We were like fucking around in the studio, smoking, drinking, and I started like singing this really falsetto, like goofy thing that I was recording. And we were just like fucking around. And then Ivano, the main producer, like sampled my voice and like reversed it and then like edited it. And then he started chopping it up. And next thing we knew, we had this whole like kind of sample intro, and he put drums on it. And I was like, holy shit. It was one of those things where I was just like, give me 15 minutes to write the song. And I wrote like, whatever it was, chorus, verse. I don't know if I have 2 verses on that. I'm pretty sure I don't. And then once we had it, I was like, this energy, like Kenny's voice would sit so well on this. And when we sent it to him, he really did like his own thing, but in the world of the album. And I think that's part of what makes that feature so special, is like, he sounds different than he does on a lot of his music because he's trying to fit into that world.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'm curious about with you is you are a new artist in Atlanta, right? And whenever if you stop there and tell anyone that line, new artist from Atlanta, you're gonna think rap. You're gonna think sort of rap, trap, high energy. That's sort of what the city's become known for, I feel, over the last sort of decade. Well, it's always been known for it, but really that kind of took off with the sort of rise of trap over the last like 10 years.
Right.
I'm sort of curious as to how, you were able to say, find a lane that's so different from what is, really popular in Atlanta right now, and sort of find success with it. Like, what attracted you to the more R&B soulful type of thing, even though you still do rap, but what attracted you to
Right.
that sort of lane?
Sorry, I gotta plug my phone in. To be honest with you, I mean, I really just think like when I started making music, obviously, I wanted to be a rapper. I mean, there's no like I was just writing raps. That was like everything I was working on. All my influences, inspirations were rappers. And I think it was just over time, especially when I started performing, I was like, okay, I love rapping. I love like writing this type of music. But is it my voice? Like when I'm on stage, is this music, like, do I feel like it's my music and like a signature kind of original sound? And so literally just through playing shows, I would start singing like more and more kind of frequently at the shows. And I just started to notice like where before people would be like, oh, like this is pretty good. Like when I started singing, people would like come over from the bar to see who was performing, and like come up to me afterwards and be like, yo, that was crazy. And I think it was just like, my dad was a singer-songwriter. I still is technically. It's not like he was exactly like successful, but like, he performed when I was growing up a lot at like coffee houses and stuff. And he met my mom in choir. So like, I don't know. I never really liked singing as a kid. So I never really thought I was going to do it. And I like didn't play an instrument. And then like, that's why I think rap, like I gravitated to it so hard, because I was like, oh fuck, I just accidentally opened this text. No, I think like, it's just the kind of thing, like I didn't want to be a singer. It just sort of happened. And I still consider myself like a rapper in the sense that I write most of my songs like they're rap songs. I just sing them, and I think like that's a big part of it. It's also just like authenticity. Like I was never going to be an artist who's going to like make trap, because that's not my life. You know what I'm saying? And I'm also not going to be an artist that's going to make like a bunch of like super high energy, like fuck them up rap music, just because it's not my energy as a person. You know what I'm saying? Like I like listening to that music. It just doesn't like, I don't think I'm the one who's supposed to make it. So I really think it boils down to that. I mean, that's what like my dad told me when I started writing songs, was like, he was just like, if you're going to rap and if you're going to write songs, like just be as authentic as possible. Write about shit that you experience and stuff in your life, and don't try to pretend to be somebody you're not. And I think that's one of the great things about rap is
you can really tell when someone's bullshitting. You know, when someone's music is like a projection of something that they're not, it's very obvious. And I think like, especially on stage, it's obvious. And I've had situations where I like had rappers, artists I was friends with on the internet who were like, their music was super like dope. It was like heady and like, you know, lyrics about like drugs and like, I got the strap and like all this type of shit. And then I'll meet them at a show and they'll be like, oh, hey man, it's a pleasure to meet you. Like, this is great. I'm so excited for the show. And I'm like, damn, but your voice on your records is like so deep and scary. Like, why are you just like fucking regular? So, I mean, it's just one of those things. I think Atlanta is somewhere that really embraces authenticity in that way. So I think like the reason more and more people started gravitating towards me when I performed, the more that I was singing and like letting myself kind of experiment on stage with how I performed, is because they felt like I meant what I was saying. And like, you know, that's what I always tell people who want to perform in Atlanta. I'm like, just be authentic. Don't try to force the crowd to be interested in you, and do your set and get off stage. You know what I'm saying? Like Atlanta is not going to boo you off stage unless you give them a reason. That's what I always tell. Like, that we're a very respectful audience for the most part. So
yeah, man. I love that you started speaking about like these Atlanta artists, because I feel like you're a part of this like new wave of like artists from Atlanta that like are coming with a new sound, whether they're rappers or not, in terms of like their authenticity. I'm thinking of you, obviously. I'm thinking of like artists like Grip. I'm thinking of Childish Major. I'm thinking of Deontay Hitchcock. I'm thinking of Kenny Mason, obviously. And obviously you were on the Grip project from this year. What's Yeah, I just noticed that today. I love that project.
I'm about to tour with him actually.
That's
but
super
it's not
dope.
announced. So
that's super dope. That's
yeah.
super dope. Yeah. We could talk about that. But yeah, kind of like how do you feel about like the inspiration of like that group of upcoming Atlanta artists? Because that's something I've always like kind of defended with Atlanta, because like everybody's like trap. And I'm not like the biggest fan of trap music, but there's so much, you know, creatively coming from Atlanta, you know, other sounds, even if it's rap. How do you feel about that in terms of like how everybody's kind of, you know, experimenting with Atlanta sounds and still taking inspiration from trap, but still making their own sound? That was long.
Right. No. I mean, to be honest, I think that you look at cities where a lot of artists have kind of blown up in quick succession. Oftentimes they have the same sound, right? Mm-hmm. So you look at like the Chicago wave, Chance the Rapper, Vic Mensa, Mick Jenkins, Saba. That's the same lane. Now, I'm not saying they all make the same music. You know what I'm saying? And like they're very different and unique artists, but it was the same soundscape they were all using. Same type of shit in LA. You know what I'm saying? Like when Blueface popped up, everybody was rapping off beat and like trying to do this like new West Coast like snap music thing. It was interesting, but like it worked. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with like Smoke Perp and Trippie Redd and all that shit. The whole like Bring the Rage and also Do Xanax music. It was like a whole wave. So what sets Atlanta apart is that everybody here, like Atlanta is so important culturally and like musically in the hip hop landscape and in just like the music. I mean, Georgia is like hugely influential in like music, and you know, there is like no UK music presence. Like to me, I mean, obviously there's like Beatles and shit, but I'm talking about like, you know, 60s, 70s, 80s, like 90s. The UK is directly influenced by Atlanta music and by Georgia Southern blues music. And like, you know, listen to the Rolling Stones. They're just doing an Allman Brothers impression. You know what I'm saying? They're great. But like, so the thing that's interesting about our city, especially now, is it's like everybody wants to put you in one of two boxes. One is like the thug and like Lil Baby box, right? The other box is the outcast box. Yeah. And I swear to God, bro, like if you're lyrical in Atlanta, it's like you have to be the next outcast. That's what everybody wants is for you to like, you got to use the Dungeon Family, Organized Noise sounds. You got to have the like big crit hooks, the Southern like dialect in your raps, like all this shit. I mean, you talk to people like Earth Gang and Grip and like, you know, Deontay Hitchcock, like everybody fucks with Outkast, bro, but we're not trying to like emulate them. You know what I'm saying? Like we have our own inspiration. So I think like that's an interesting aspect of it too, where like, I mean, I remember talking to Kenny like early on when he was like just basically saying like he knew everybody was just going to be like, oh, he's the next Jid. And he was like, that's hard. Like, that's a good comparison. You know what I'm saying? But like, I'm my own artist. And I think that's a big thing in Atlanta is just comparison, because they're there, you know, like when Earth Gang puts out an album, somebody's going to compare it to Outkast. Yeah. And like, you can definitely make the argument that that's the closest thing to Outkast. Like, I would say Earth Gang and like Crit are really the only like Atlanta art, just right off the top of my head, that I'm like, that's a very Outkast sound. I think Deontay Hitchcock has it because of his tone and his accent. You know what I'm saying? But Grip raps more like fucking like Royce da 5'9" to me than like Andre 3000. So like Grip has this, like, I think it makes so much sense for him to sign to Eminem, because that like technical rap ability is very, you know, it's like kind of a rare, unique sound, because not a lot of people can rap like that. But I think what makes our city, and like you said, when you tell people like, we don't just have this one sound, it's like, I think all of the kids that I've kind of come up with, and like there's different tiers to that, you know what I'm saying? Like, I felt like I was behind the like Awful Records wave, like that was going on when I was starting out. And then it was kind of like, you know, McConan wave. And then by the time like Yachty and Cardi were blowing up, you know, we hit, like, I was already into like I was really into Jid and Earth Gang, and I was like, bro, they're next. You know what I'm saying? So there's always these kind of tiers, but the problem is there's so many talented kids in Atlanta that not everyone can make it. And so you get into this situation where, like, you know, Jid has that line where he says, most of the people I came up with still haven't came up. He's talking directly about like, when you're in the city and there's like a wave going on, you know, everybody thinks they're going to make it. That's just natural. It's like, we're all playing these shows together. You know, I headline one, you headline one, like everybody's hanging out all the time. Everybody's a fan of each other's music. So it just feels like this is all going to happen, you know, but like I've seen artists that I love that are super talented just walk away from music eventually, because it's not going to happen for everybody. And, you know, I think something like Kenny, he was really like, I mean, the class or like the wave that Kenny came out of, all of us are like still here on this, you know, like grinding, like trying to make shit happen. And we're like so excited for him. You know, I really think like everyone's really proud that he's doing such amazing shit and like making such incredible music. And like, it's obvious why he's the one, you know what I'm saying? And like, we all knew that like years ago. We were like, he's the one. Like, we saw him perform. We were like, that's it.
And I really like how you all uplift each other. That's something that I'm noticing is like,
totally agree.
Most of the time the environment is so competitive, but with you and just the way you talk about all these people that you're coming up with, it feels very familial, very, we're all on this together, you know, when you and I win type of thing. And I think that helps, you know?
No, for sure. I mean, it's just a weird thing, man, because like I think it's impossible to ignore the competitive aspect, but I think that we all do a really good job of understanding that one person's success is not our lack of success. And that's like a huge sticking point with me, where like I could spend hours just being jealous of like, so-and-so got this opportunity, so-and-so's opening for this artist, or like he's in this video, or like, you know, she's about to go on tour with what, like, it happens all the time, bro. Like, you know, I've been making music and like playing in the Atlanta scene probably since I was like 17, and I'm 24 now. There's artists who will like start playing in Atlanta one year and they're on tour the next. You know, I had a show with Rico Nasty when I was like 18 in this old t-shirt factory, and there was like 8 people there, and she was performing like all her old music, but we knew she was the shit. Like, even then I remember like going up to her and being like, yo, you're crazy. She would not remember that. You know what I'm saying? But like, that's the kind of shit. I think that's part of what makes Atlanta so unique, is there's so many artists that we look up to that haven't blown up. So like, you know, we'll go play a show and Key will be there. Or like, you'll go to a show and like McConan and like fucking Burberry Perry are there. Like, just people are around in Atlanta. And so I think it's kind of also just our wave. Like, we're all kind of inspired by similar things, and like we all respect each other, and we understand that like Atlanta is huge, but it's also small. And like, you know, I feel very lucky to have friends from Southwest, have friends from North Atlanta. Like, I've got friends that obviously on the east side. So it's like, you sort of have people everywhere that you know. And that's a beautiful thing. I mean, I think that's why we feel such a sense of community, is a lot of it is like pride for Atlanta and pride for our scene as a whole, not just like each other as artists, like, oh, I'm the shit. It's like, nah, like we are super talented. And honestly, to this day, like, I don't really get why we never, I think it's just because like the blog era is dead, music discovery is different, but we all fully expected like some blog to be like, here are the 50 artists in Atlanta that are about to break through. You know what I'm saying? And it never happened. And now
Man,
it's like
keep on waiting for us to do these interviews. We'll be that blog.
right.
You just wait.
No, for sure. But that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, it's hard nowadays. It's different. That Chicago wave was so unique. And like, so just like anybody that hopped on a fucking Chuck English beat in Chicago was on.
Oh, man.
Like, it was like in like a 2-week window, you were just like, damn. And they were all collaborating with each other. And, you know, acid rap was really like the foundation for that, I think, in a sense. But all of that shit, man. And now like Saba's probably the best one. Who would have thought about that? I mean, I knew he was crazy, but like, he's fucking next level, bro. I can talk about Saba all day.
Well, let me ask you, there are artists I want you to talk about. One, I want to talk about you touring, but before I get there, I want to ask you, give me real quick 3 artists that you think have helped you sort of, whether it's define your artistry or just have been general influences. Like, who are 3 artists that you can say, yeah, they helped me get to the musical place I am today?
For sure. Number 1 is, I would say, Donald Glover.
Oh, you already know it. You know, I went to Lakeside for a year. I tell people
I
that every
know.
day.
I bet he was miserable. No, I'm playing. No, Childish Gambino, I do love his music. It has been like super important to me, but it's almost like, I think what inspires me the most about him is he can do fucking anything. And it's like literally just having this artist who's like, I'm going to make a music video that has almost no lyrics and it's going to shatter YouTube streaming records. Like, the dude played Simba and fucking Lando Calrissian in the same year. Like, bro. So seeing someone like that who can do stand-up comedy, who can do acting, directing, screenwriting, like any fucking thing he wants to do. And then he can fuck around and drop off a project like his fucking ridiculous like white cover, you know, zero like time code album. That shit was crazy. And it's like some of the songs are super long and like it's a weird album, but it works. And it's the kind of album where when I'm listening to it, I'm like, this is an artist who's so in their fucking pocket that like they can do whatever they want and it works. Like they can make an 8-minute song with 21 Savage and fucking like, he had some weird features on that album too, like Kid Ink, I think, and shit like that. But no, so he's a huge one. Another one would be Brittany Howard, the lead singer from Alabama Shakes, who obviously she's like pivoted into solo stuff now. But she's just fucking amazing. I think like her writing, her singing voice, like I've been a fan of them for so long and such a huge fan of her. I mean, like her whole like life story is really inspiring. And she's just like one of those people that I'm like, man, if I can have a career like that, you know what I'm saying? If I can create music that even exists in this world, like I'm doing something right. And I think the third musician, I guess I'll go with, it's kind of like a tie, but I'll go ahead and say, I'll say Radiohead. I'll say Radiohead because arguably they've never made a bad album and all of their albums are different. Okay. So their music is incredibly unique. It's super experimental. They're always experimenting and they never really like miss. And like they've never had an album that's like okay, compare them to a band like the Red Hot Chili Peppers, right? And obviously they're a little bit older than Red Hot Chili Peppers, but like the Red Hot Chili Peppers have like 2 great albums. They're aging pretty well, but like that's pretty much it. Radiohead, it's like every album is a different listening experience. So I'm really just inspired by their creativity and their like willingness to experiment. And also just like their longevity, you know. I think like as an artist, if you can still be relevant after like whatever your 5th or 6th album, however many fucking albums they have now, and like everyone that's a fan of you has a different album that they like the most, I think that's huge. So I was gonna say Tom Waits, which is kind of a weird one, instead of Radiohead. But if I did say Tom Waits, his music is really crazy and he's like an insane person. But I'm really inspired by his, like, he's literally so embodying this character of Tom Waits in everything he does that, like, if you go look up Tom Waits interviews, it's like, how can this be a real person? You know what I'm saying? He's always smoking a cigarette. He's always got like a cloud of smoke in front of his face. He also, random thing about Tom Waits, but Heath Ledger like based the Joker off of him in The Dark Knight. So if you go on YouTube and you look up Tom Waits interview Australia, watch that interview. It will give you fucking goosebumps how much he sounds like the Joker from The Dark Knight. Like, it's insane. And it's literally just how he is. But yeah, that's another one for me, just because he's so like insane. I feel like, you know, my music's not anywhere near as like experimental as his, but that's kind of what I want to do next, is just make some shit that like you're not expecting. And I think he always does that.
I like that group of artists. I feel like that makes sense. I like the range. Not that you didn't say any two people that are in the same genre, which I can very much so appreciate. So man, let's talk about what's next for you. You said you're going on tour, right? So tell us all about it.
Yeah, so Grip, I think is gonna announce it this week. So it hasn't like been announced yet. But we're doing like an 8-city tour, East Coast, West Coast. We're going to Brooklyn, Toronto, DC, Chicago, Michigan, LA, and San Francisco. I think that's it. But yeah, man, he just like, I don't know, the Grip, I'm just glad he fucks with me, bro. Like, he's the coolest person. He's like so humble and kind of down to earth, and like, he probably hate that I said that type of shit about him, but he's just like a really real dude. And like, he's never going to be fake to you. He's never going to, like, you know what I'm saying? He like, from the very beginning, like, he knew what he wanted me to do on his album, and he gave me some freedom to like experiment with it. But like, once I hit it, he was like, that's it, you know? And so I think I just feel blessed, or I hate using that term, but I feel lucky that he wanted me to come on tour with him. You know, it's like my first kind of big tour ever, really. And I think it'll be really cool because we have very different styles, and I'll be really interested to see how his audience like reacts to having an opening act that's so like, I don't know, just different. I mean, his music is like so heady and like lyrical and like punch you in the mouth type shit, and my music is very like, for lack of a better word, vibey. So I'm like, how do I give people, you know, I think really my job as an opener is just to get people excited for the headliner and give them something to remember. You know what I'm saying? Get in there, get done. I played a show recently where the opener like had a bunch of friends there, which was great, but then they like did an encore, and I'm not like the kind of person who's like angry about shit like that, but I was like, dog, if you're a fucking opener, don't do an encore. That's insane. Like, you're fucking up the whole flow of the show. That's crazy. And it's like, for me, you know, like, you're not going to come out on stage and do an encore when you're on tour for a different artist. That's just disrespect. So, but that just boils down to me saying, I think my job as opener is get people excited for the show, and also like linger outside the show and say hi to everybody, because that shit works. When I went on tour in like 2019 or 2018 and was playing these like tiny little shows, like 4 people there, I would go talk to those kids for like an hour while I smoked after the show, and all of them are like still fan. It's really like, it's so funny. It's like one of the first things you read about with like, interact with every fan, but it's totally true. So yeah, I'm excited about it. As long as I can afford this tour, I'm excited about it.
I mean, you're talking about like, you know, how they feel about you, but I would say both you and Grip are like, you know, I'm thinking about Grip's 2019 project Stub Nose and this project Kingfisher from you, like, they're really conceptual, like really like an idea of like what they want to be like. So obviously your sound's different, but like kind of I feel like the way you guys kind of like approach music is really similar, which I think is super dope. And it's kind of dope that you guys are you know, touring together, which is super awesome.
Yeah,
man.
No, I mean, I think it's, that's one of the first things we talked about was like, we're both artists that try to make concept albums, and it's kind of a lost art right now. It's sort of like dying out in a sense. It's not really dying out, but I think bigger name artists are scared to take the risk of making a concept album, because if the concept doesn't work and you're like, I don't know, Justin Bieber is a bad example, but Justin Bieber, and you make a fucking album about, I don't know, Martin Luther King. I don't know what the fuck that was, but it didn't work. You know what I'm saying? So like, a lot of these artists don't take those risks. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
Bro, that Justin Bieber album was a nightmare.
Oh, don't get Nnamdi started.
Yeah,
Don't get him
not get
started.
Nnamdi
No,
started.
it's about time
don't get him-
someone else said it,
don't get
though,
it-
because
don't
I
get
feel
the
like
man
I've been
started.
shouting out a wall. You're right. Let me not get
Yo,
started.
do you
We
think
ain't
do you
talking
think
about
Justin
him.
Bieber? Do you think Justin Bieber's been to the MLK museum? Do you think he's been
I
there?
don't think he knows who MLK is, straight up.
Ah, my-
You think he's been to his house? That's like a thing you have to do when you're like in middle school. You go to his house or something like that.
Yeah, I
elementary
mean,
school.
well, in Atlanta, we go to like Ebenezer and like walk around.
Oh
and
my
look at all that
gosh.
stuff. But I don't think
I'll-
Justin Bieber's ever been there.
He ain't never
You
been
know,
there.
Maybe when he first came to Atlanta with Usher was like, all right, first we got to learn
Took
about
him on a little
MLK.
field trip.
Yeah.
You think it's been the MLK to middle school? Oh, he don't want to go there.
Nah, he definitely. There's like the old Chris Rock joke where he's like, if you're in a city and you look up and you're on MLK Drive, get the
Oh,
fuck
man.
out of there.
Oh man, bro. That's the west side. Don't go down there.
Yeah.
But bro, let me ask you, as we start to wrap this up, I mean, for lack of a better term, even though I know you talked about, everyone's still trying to rise, everyone's grinding, you have found like some legit success. Like you have numbers you can point to. And I know people don't do it for numbers, don't get me wrong, but you have stuff you can point to say like, I'm growing as an artist. Like
Right.
on Spotify, I think you're nearing like 300K monthly listeners. Pink Skies, like got huge, like millions of listens. I was wondering, did that end up on an album, by the way, real quick? I was just wondering.
Nope.
What was the decision to not include that on an album?
Well, the album I was working on was Blue Don't Make Me Cry. So we were like, if we throw this bitch on this album, it's not gonna make any sense. It would just be like a Post Malone, White Iverson moment of like, wow, my album did this many first week because this song already has fucking, 3 billion downloads or whatever. I don't know. I mean, bro, Pink Skies is just such a fucking like random thing that happened where like I made that song in like one take. We put it out with like no promo or anything, and like it just happened. I don't even know. You know what I'm saying? Like, there was no strategy behind it, and then it's almost like a cursed thing where like we were gonna put it on an album. Like it was gonna be like one of the main tracks on the Little Make Me Cry album. It just didn't fit, like for obvious reasons. It just the sound of it was wrong, so we left it off. And then I was making a music video for it. We were gonna like shoot this music video on Super 8, and like we were filming part of it in a Waffle House. It was gonna be really cool. And then that fell through. So it was like Pink Skies just continues to be successful despite me not investing any money in it. I haven't put any type of like promo or press or PR behind it. It's only gotten into like one editorial playlist ever. And it wasn't even like a big one. And it was only in it for like a week. You know what I'm saying? Like that song is an anomaly.
But there has to be something refreshing about just knowing like you can't control what song ends up being the song. You can do is put out your music, and just whatever blows up, blows up.
For sure. I mean, it's definitely when you have a song like Pink Skies that has so many plays. I have like there's not a majority. There's a section of my fan base that are Pink Skies fans. And I think that's a really kind of odd thing because it's not a real hit. It's not like I'm a big enough artist that like that song won a Grammy and everybody's like, oh, one hit wonder. Like, but that's a song that people are like, this is the soundtrack to my high school. This song changed my life. This got me through my adolescence. That like, I just met my wife to this song. Like all this type of shit where I'm like, damn, like I'm glad this music means so much to you, but you should check out my album too. You know what I'm saying? It's just hard sometimes to like get people to cross that gap. I remember this girl on Twitter one time. I was Googling myself, and this girl had said on Twitter like, oh my God, I love this song Pink Skies. And then someone else commented like, too bad the rest of his music is trash. And I was like, damn. So I went and like replied to the tweet, and all I said, I didn't like you know, all I said was like, damn, LOL. And the dude like immediately DM'd me and is like listing all my songs that he likes and all this shit, which is like so typical. He's like, I don't even know why I said that, bro. I love Shells on the Rug and This Ain't Love and like all this shit. But
No, but look, full disclosure, I get it because we once tweeted like a Earth Gang clip, and we were like, "Oh no, Spillage."
No, we
like,
did it.
"Oh, like I don't, we don't get the concept," and they hella replied, and we're like, "This is the concept." We're like, "No, you got to listen to the episode."
No.
messaged y'all.
We weren't those guys. Okay, we said we still liked it, which we did, but it was the Spillage Village job.
Let me ask you. So, does the success of Kingfisher, which you posted, that came out in November, it has 500,000 streams. So, does that successful much more rewarding than like the Pink Skies success?
for sure. I mean, not that Pink Skies isn't rewarding, but I think having this album, I mean, if this album gets to 1 million streams before like next February, I mean, that's not going to happen, but I couldn't ask for a better, you know what I'm saying? Like, even being where it is now with those numbers, it's like, it's amazing because you do put all this time into it and you want people to listen to it over and over. And, you know, for whatever reason, I am not an artist that like blogs feature or like big artist cosign or, you know, like I've never really had the, like, I don't even really get playlisted. You know what I'm saying? Like Alien Girl got put into Antipop, which was amazing. But that doesn't really happen to me. I've never really had like a big playlist moment or like a song go viral on TikTok or like whatever type shit. So what I have to remember with all that is like, I'm an album artist, I'm a catalog artist, and more than anything, I'm a grassroots artist who's trying to build a fan base that, you know, my goal in music is not to be famous. You know what I'm saying? I would like to be famous because I would get more opportunities and I would make money potentially if more people know who I am. But I really feel like my goal has always been just to be able to make music and tour that music to whomever wants to hear it. So like, if I have a fan base that's going to come see me live, like 10 years from now, when if I want to do like small rooms, like 50 to 100 cap, and they're going to come and like, I can put money in my pocket off of music for a living. Like, that's my goal. You know what I'm saying? Like, making a career out of doing what I love is the goal. It would be amazing to be like performing on SNL and at the Grammys and at the VMAs and like all this shit. Like, I think it's really cool, but I also think it doesn't happen for some people. And, you know, you have artists like Freddie Gibbs that like have been making great music for years. And all of a sudden everybody's like, he might be the best rapper around. It's like, bro, he's not new. You know what I'm saying? But like, that happens. And like, there's a ton of artists that I look up to, you know, that are like that. I mean, Key is one example that like, he kind of stays in the cut. Like, he doesn't have to be famous, you know what I'm saying, to do what he does well. But like, there's a lot of, I mean, everybody kind of knows who listens to music, like who Earl Sweatshirt is, but you're not going to see Earl Sweatshirt at the fucking VMAs. You know what I'm saying? But he'll sell out his tour. And I think like, that's really my goal, is like, I want people that care about me and care about my art, who want to come see me live and like support my music. That's really the goal. And so, yeah, it's really fulfilling for people to gravitate towards the album, because the album is the most important thing to me, you know?
Dope.
Yeah.
Super dope.
That makes a lot of just sense. And I think the kind of artist you are, I see that happening for you. And like, I know the three of us, we're going to keep tabs on you. And I think we're optimistic that if we were to say, let's follow up in a year, that you're going to hit a lot of those marks. So
yeah, let's do it. A year from now, y'all will be in my like Vanity Fair Billie Eilish.
No, you're joking, but for real. So
yeah.
And you're from Atlanta, so that's super
and
dope.
you're from Atlanta, so does work,
dope,
bro.
like, yeah, it's super dope, man. Seeing artists from Atlanta, like my younger brother's like, dude, you don't listen to that Baby or that? I'm like, nah, bro. And you know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many other Atlanta artists. It's dope. Like, but yeah, man, it's super dope to see artists from Atlanta coming up and doing their thing. Thank you. It's super awesome. So yeah. So Wiley from Atlanta.
Wiley, we really appreciate you for joining us. I know I told you 20 minutes and we're hitting a solid 45, but it's cool. I appreciate you for rocking with us, man.
No, it's my fault, and I fucking talk too much.
Great answers.
Yeah, this is the one environment where you talking too much is actually a great thing.
Good thing. Right, exactly.
No, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Also, this might be the first interview I've ever had where the first question wasn't, where are you from?
I mean, if they
So
ask you
thank
that,
you
that's
for
a
that.
problem.
Look,
Somebody ask you that, that's a
from
problem.
3 people that went to actual journalism school, so we know like another, whatever, like we do this.
Right.
If anyone ever asks you that as your first question, they're not doing a good job because they can even Google you. So that's just not.
That's what I'm
And your
saying. They
name.
think they think it's hilarious. They think it's so funny.
It's the bad joke.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm like, good one. I'm like, you're the first one to ever ask me that.
Yeah,
That's
never
so
heard
funny.
that before.
Yeah. I'll start doing
so-
like Lil Uzi shit and just be like, this interview's over.
no, you got to, bro. You got to. But all right, cool. I appreciate it again, man. Thank you for joining. And
Listen
we
to
will definitely keep
Kingfisher.
that. Yes, we'll
Hell
put it on
yeah.
our playlist this week, so you'll hear it there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Listen
And
to
definitely support the guy, man.
Kingfisher, Wiley from
Exactly.
Atlanta.
For sure.
Again, really big thanks to Wiley from Atlanta. Y'all, that may be one of my favorite interviews we've done so far. And I'm saying one
That's
of,
great.
so no one else can get mad, but definitely one of my favorite interviews.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. He was great. And he's
Um,
from Atlanta, so
Yeah, like I mentioned, be on the lookout for the 97 demo playlist, our December playlist filled of all of our favorite songs we're listening to this month. He will be on there. Are we gonna put Christmas songs on our December playlist? Are we gonna do that? Not this week.
We did that
Oh,
last
no,
year.
Maybe.
Yeah, last
Maybe.
year.
Depends. It depends. Depends how we're feeling.
Well, stay tuned. for
Every
these
year
songs.
as I get older, I get less in the Christmas, mood. So like,
That's
depends.
sad.
I want someone else to go first on Project of the Week. I meant to say this before we started recording, and I forgot.
Okay.
So
Yeah, Nnamdi could go last. I'll go. Mine is Coupe de Grace, I guess. Ransom in Rome Streets. Ransom is an artist from New Jersey. There's actually an old video of him like
Is it not just coup de grace?
coup de grace. Ooh. And you see,
That's the saying. That's
that's why I got somebody from college here. See, look, I mean, I went to college too, but Avery's good at this stuff. He does this. But yeah, coup de grace, whatever. Ransom in Rome Streets. Rome Streets is actually signed to Griselda, which is dope. So yeah, that's cool. And Ransom is an artist from New Jersey, longtime artist from New Jersey. So he's been around a while. So they both have put out projects this year, but they obviously put out a collab project, and it's really, really good. Che Noir is on it, Avery. Remember from last year?
Mhm.
She's great.
Fire.
Yeah, she's great. The Game is on here. He's on here. So yeah, some good music on here. 11 songs, 38 minutes. So check that out. Coup de grace.
My project of the week is I've Got Some Living to Do by Jelani Aria. This is another one where just like I was listening to Hippocampus and like the album ended and then like this guy started playing and like really caught my attention. But he's great. It's like really cool indie rock. I think he's from San Diego. So yeah, I mean it's just really great music. There's a song called Overexposed that I really loved. And also the title track I've Got Some Living to Do is great. So check it out.
Dope.
I chose The House is Burning by Isaiah Rashad. The House is Burning, by Isaiah Rashad. And I chose this, pretty simply. Our Spotify Wrapped came out, and my top 5, the 3 rappers on that list were, well, not rappers, but I don't know, J. Cole, The Weeknd, and Isaiah Rashad, which shocked me. But then I remembered how much I listened to The House is Burning when it came out, and like the months after. Honestly, every month leading up to when we saw him live. Which one was that? I don't remember. November, maybe? Or no?
November, October.
September?
I think it was September, actually.
And then when did this album drop?
July.
Oh, okay. So yeah, there's a solid 4 months where I was listening to this pretty often, and I guess that made it one of my most listened to projects this year. So honestly, I'm a fan. You'll find some of the classics. I've been in a very Claymore mood lately, so that'll probably be on the playlist.
Great song.
And yeah, so find that plus some of our favorite Wiley from Atlanta tracks on our 97 demo playlist. Segue to our newsletter. What did we write about this week, guys? I wrote about Rico Nasty because if you haven't been following, she's been complaining about being sort of harassed on Playboy Cardi's King Vamps tour. The crowd has booted her, they've thrown stuff at her, like it's been kind of bad.
She's making very
at one
vulnerable
point,
tweets
she
about it
literally
too.
jumped into the crowd trying to identify who was harassing her and get them out. Like, it just isn't a good look. And it's just sort of bothered me that a lot of people, mostly men, have been silent about this. Playboy Cardi's been silent about it. It doesn't take a lot to get on stage and say, yo, y'all gotta chill with Rico. You doing that once?
I'm leaving.
You doing that once during one show, we'll send a message. It'll be recorded. They'll share it. They'll repost it. It'll get on some blogs. That's all you needed to do. And it's like, he just hasn't done that. And I'm just tired of us saying stuff like protect Black women when it's fun. but then in clear instances of opportunities to do so, we see that doesn't happen. So I sort of wrote about that.
That's just such a negative thing to do. Like I've experienced, like you want to see an artist and you're like, oh, I don't know, but like not boom, you're just like, oh, just kind of chill. You're not like bullying them, but like being that negative and like toxic is like terrible. And Rico Nasty's super dope. Like that's another thing. It's not like this is like some like Rico Nasty's a dope artist that's had success.
Yeah,
it's insane. It's insane.
And I'm just like, you know, when Drake got booed, Tyler handled that quickly.
Exactly. He was like, exactly. He was
So
like, I can't believe y'all did this. I
never
got one of
boo
the
a guest.
bigger artists. I'm never gonna do nothing for y'all again. Y'all are so trash. And Playboy Cardi's been zipped. But yeah. Avery,
I wrote about my Spotify Wrapped, where for the third consecutive year, my top artist was Drake. So I just
this is a stand.
kind of exposing myself in my Spotify Wrapped. I think 3 of my top 5 songs were also by Drake, none of which were on the album.
Wait, you're a stan. Oh, so you're a stan. You know that, right?
Look, I can't even deny it. I just
Oh my gosh.
threw myself under the bus here. So, yeah.
The fact that it wasn't Phoebe, it wasn't
Phoebe was
Japanese
last year.
Breakfast.
Japanese
it
Breakfast was
Drake.
4th on
the
my
fact
list.
that Drake and Kanye ranked above Japanese Breakfast, I don't even
Okay,
know.
let me explain my Kanye being number 2. He would be in my top 5 because last year he was number 4. But this year, because we have a music podcast and we review music, I had to listen to Donda like 5 or 6 times.
Okay,
Well,
okay,
just
but
like-
that's still not an
stand and
excuse.
keep it moving,
That's still not an excuse
dog.
I am-
because we all listen to
So that
Donda,
didn't
but-
add 7 hours onto my playing time for Kanye.
True.
Huh? Or like we didn't review any Japanese Breakfast or Weezer.
True.
Huh?
Fair.
So I just want to shut up. Okay.
Ah,
So
shut up.
Kanye is my number 2, and I'm explaining it that way. He
Hey,
would be in my top 5.
You still listen to him outside.
He would
of
be in
Donda.
my top 5, but he is number 2 for I think that reason.
Cool. What's up? I mean, I wrote about Brent Faiyaz. He just
Speaking of
released a track.
stands,
Speaking of stands,
Literally.
he released a single Mercedes, and the album's on the way. It's coming. I feel like within the next like couple of weeks. I feel like it's gonna be like last week of the year.
you think
type
it's coming
thing,
out
so
this year?
I think it is too. I think he's gonna troll and put out like the last week of the year type thing. So it's not gonna be on no year-end list, but I could
Except
see
for
him doing
Noah's.
that. Except for mine. It's been out for 2 days, top 5. But yeah, I was talking about how like we're in for a really varied and exciting project from Brent because I don't think people have noticed this, but like this is the first time he's had features on like his music ever. Seriously, like if you look at all his music, all his singles, he's never ever had a feature. He's been featured on stuff, but he's never had features. So I'm excited for what Brent has coming. He's already worked with Tyler this year. He's obviously worked with Drake. So yeah, man, I'm super Georgia Smith. Like I'm super hyped, and I'm really excited for a big album coming from Brent. Considering F the World was just the EP, and that was like the best project last year for me. So
It literally was. I'm still not over
exactly,
that.
you know what I'm saying? He's like that's like my B-sides basically. So like. Yeah, man, Brent's just
Does
super
he have
talented, super
an
creative.
album out, like sing solo? Like not under
Yeah, he has a
Saunders?
solo. He
Yeah.
has Saunders. I
Okay.
consider.
Oh, that's
Saunders.
right.
Yeah, that's the only one I consider like album. But all of them are kind of considered like EPs. Of
I
the
tried
thing,
to
you know what
fight
I'm
to
saying?
get F the World on our best albums list last year.
It was on my top. It was number
It
one for
was.
me last year. It was number one.
Oh,
for me
was
last
it?
year.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Mine was
good.
number.
Never
Yeah.
mind.
Don't play.
Disregard.
Hey,
It was
don't
on my
try to
list, I
play.
think, too. It was
Yeah,
on my
don't
top
play me.
5.
So yeah, man.
Okay.
So
You know,
Good
I really
newsletter.
appreciate how much variety you get out of our newsletter. I'm a big fan of that. It's never boring. Everyone always writes great stuff. Remember, our newsletter comes out every Friday at about noon. Check that out. Make sure to share, subscribe, tell people our podcast. Thank you for listening to it. Be on the lookout for our playlist, which drops Tuesday, right? Wednesday, which drops Wednesday. I know our schedule.
it's all good.
And again, thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next week when we start kicking off our year-end series. So we will see you then. Thanks for listening.